Awesome. All right, so where we're going to pick up is the forward to the first edition. And last week we were able to talk about the very first paragraph of the forward to the first edition, which I don't know about you, I love the first paragraph of the forward to the first edition. Some of you are like, that's weirdly specific, Paige. You got some weirdly specific interests. Ooh, don't get me started on the forward to the second edition. We're probably going to get there. But just in it, it talks about, how we have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So we have the hope of recovered and the hopelessness of my physical allergy and my mental obsession. And it talks about the main purpose of this book, which is to show people like you and I precisely how we can recover, precisely how we can get from that state of hopelessness where I cannot stop relapsing to that place of I am recovered. The mental obsession is gone. And that is the purpose of this book. And I love that it at the end it says, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. And what I want to emphasize is that this is a way of life. This ain't no set it and forget it sort of deal. This is how I show up and live my life. But when it says has its advantages for all, I mean, this is an all-inclusive study, so whatever brings you here, you're more than welcome. But it's also a reminder that if I got some problems in my life, I have a feeling the 12 steps will help. You know what I mean? I'm not saying this is going to be the solution for everything, and we don't seek outside help. But when you've been sober a while and you got some problems piling up, and it's like your sponsor gives you the craziest suggestion you've ever heard, like write some inventory. Wild. And then you avoid doing it for a long time, and you just get more miserable and more miserable and more miserable, and then you cave and you finally do it. And then, oh my goodness, I start feeling better. I get that program of action going. I do fifth step, quiet hour 6 and 7, make some amends. Oh, I'm on that beam, rocking in that fourth dimension. So just wanted to say, has its advantages for all. Is there anything you wanted to say I was just going to do a quick recap, but is there anything you want to say before we dive into the second paragraph?
Yeah, no, and before we did that, the previous paragraph in the preface, we talked about the first directions in the big book, and I challenged the people in this room to read one of the 42 personal stories and ask yourself, did that happen to me, or I felt like that, and do I believe in this program? So, if you want to go through this journey with us, it is a study, but also we'll show you the directions in the big book. You can go through the steps with us. So, yeah, Paige, rock and roll. Let's do this.
Rock and roll. Alrighty. So it says, it is important, second full paragraph. It is important that we remain anonymous because we are too few at present to handle the overwhelming number of personal appeals which may result from this publication. Goodness gracious, what are we talking about there? So I was just talking about how I use goodness gracious a lot for somebody in my mid-30s, what are we talking about there? So the early authors of this book, the early members of Alcoholics Anonymous, when they put this book out into the world, they were using anonymity as a little bit of a shield. Like, oh man, if this book goes out into the world and you can find me, Bill Wilson, 180, oh man, is it 182 or 184 Clinton Street? Howard will correct me. 182 Clinton Street. Yeah. Is it 182 Clinton Street, Brooklyn, New York? Man, I'm going to be overwhelmed. Dr. Robert Holbrook Smith. And I don't got that address in my little brain. But I still have a head cold. We're just going to be a little loosey-goosey on the numbers. Like they were so worried if you had my address, my phone, that we would be so overwhelmed that we couldn't live, we couldn't function. But what I want to point out about that word anonymity is not secrecy. Often we think anonymity means y'all can't know my last name. And that's not what we're talking about. There's a privacy aspect of it for sure, but what is anonymity? Because that's a $10 word. That, listen, is hard to say when we first get here, But what is anonymity? Anonymity is humility and selfless service. You know what I mean? I'm going to take the action and I don't need the credit. And then we see that anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, and we will see that spirit of humility and selfless service in all of these traditions. Hey, speaking about traditions, let's keep reading. It's a little bit of a spoiler ahead because these paragraphs are going to be talking about the 12 traditions. Yeah, you don't have to be excited. So it says, being mostly business or professional folk, we could not well carry on our occupations in such an event. We would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation. Listen, avocation was another word. I don't know. Do I advocate? And listen, I do. I advocate. That's not how you conjugate that. I only advocate. It's all avocation all the time. What I mean by that is I'm not employed. So a vocation is my paid employment. Now, I just want to emphasize something. This goes out in 1939. The United States, really the world, is still in the thrust of the Great Depression. And they're saying like, hey, if we put this book out to the world and you can find me, I'm going to be so overwhelmed by alcoholics in need of help. I'm not going to be able to have a 9 to 5. I'm not going to be able to survive financially. And the idea that out of the Great Depression, a bunch of, just a gaggle. That's the technical term. A gaggle of alcoholics, a gaggle of derelicts. It's, that's what they're called. It's not. Don't write that down. But that they're going to help other alcoholics for free. What? That's what we're saying with it. We'd like it understood. It is an avocation. And if you're writing in your book, and I hear that's what all the cool kids are doing, and that didn't get us in trouble before, you can make a little note that that is the genesis of the 8th tradition, tradition 8, where it talks about how our 12-step work is never, never to be paid for. Over to you if you want to say anything about that paragraph.
Yeah, that was great. I think one thing is that we can't be, what did Dr. Bob said, we can't be too anonymous in an anonymous program, so we have to make sure to say, I have a heart attack while we're doing Zoom, I want someone to find out what my last name is so they can find me if I go to the hospital, so I love that that this anonymity thing is, I mean, think about it, about this humility, and would you say humility and what? I love that. And selfless action,
Selfless service.
right? Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
selfless.
Why don't you want to try and practice anonymity? Go help someone and don't tell anyone about it, right? Yeah, that's all I got on that. Thanks.
Absolutely. And I was doing a big book study recently where I was talking about what I like to call ninja service, because I'm an adult. And so I like calling it ninja, which is anonymity. Like, go do service and don't get caught. Go do something in the meeting that needs to get done and don't get any credit for it. And sometimes I will call it like side quests, like I'm at a meeting and I just gave myself a little side quest, like I'm a video game character. If you got that person that's coming into the meeting and they're new and they're scared and they're uncomfortable, I'm gonna make sure I go talk to them. That's my little side quest. You can pick other ones, but if there's somebody that's sitting by themselves, ooh, my side quest is see if I can get them included in a conversation like that. That's what I'm here for. So yeah, awesome. So it says, when writing or speaking publicly about alcoholism, we urge each of our fellowship to omit his personal name, designating himself instead as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Very earnestly, and earnestness is with sincerity, earnestly, we ask the press to observe this, for otherwise we shall be greatly handicapped. That direct publicity is going to be not great. What are we talking about there? So what we're talking about is the 11th tradition. And so it's one of those like a precursor to the tradition. And so if somebody of Alcoholics Anonymous was being interviewed for, I'll say newspaper or radio, but TV, press, radio, TV, films, any sort of public media, that their personal name is omitted. That's not just my last name, that's my first and last name. So if I was quoted, please don't quote me. I'm not somebody that should be quoted. That's worrisome. But if I were to be quoted, it wouldn't say, Paige, that snazzy little drunk, said. It would be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous was quoted as saying, or a member of Cocaine Anonymous was quoted as saying, whatever fellowship you're a part of. That's what it's saying. And sometimes people will be like, I identify as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous because that's what it says in the book. And you can do that if you want. I just want to emphasize that that is at the public level. So,
Mhm.
anything you want to say on that?
No, I was just about to say public level. Yeah. Yeah.
Rock and roll. All
Mhm.
right. So it says we're not an organization in the conventional sense of the word. And I'm just going to stop there because what are we talking about? We're talking about tradition 9. And when we talk about organization, listen, we've all made that joke, when the meeting's running a little late or Paige didn't put the thing on the clipboard to put it in the chat ahead of time, me, or, I forgot to do a Zoom setting. And then we go, we ought not be organized. While we've all made that joke, myself included, I will be a smidge pedantic that that's not what that means. You're not wrong if you say it, because it's one of our jokes. You know what I mean? We make that all the time. Yeah, Dr. Bob on anonymity is in the chat. Howard put it in. I saw it, and then I was going to say something, and then shocker, I forgot. We ought not be organized. See, that's an example how we use that. Uh, but what are we talking about? So most organizations have a structure. You have a CEO, a boss, and then you have like CFOs, and then you have managers, and then you have your middle management, and then you have your employees. That's not how Alcoholics Anonymous is structured. It's like flipped. The most powerful position that I could ever have is simply member. And this is how I like to describe the ninth tradition. It's like I come to the restaurant that is my 12-step fellowship. And if I am a member, I simply sit at a table and I get served. I am served by all those who are in service to serve me. Delightful. I like that. But then I get involved. Yeah. But then I get involved in service. And so where do I typically get involved in service? At my home group. So I begin to be a server and I serve the table that is my home group. And then I might get involved in a place like district or area. And then I'm serving my home group and the district and the area. So I'm not climbing this corporate ladder. I just got more tables to serve. And that's what we're talking about with tradition 9. Is there anything you want to say on that one?
No, no. Keep
Awesome.
going.
Sounds good. It says there are no fees or dues whatsoever. We pass a basket around, but that is completely voluntary by the group's own members. Listen, you can't show up to Gold's Gym and be like, hey, I'll just put some money in the basket. You know what I mean? You have to pay. I assume I don't go to the gym. So you're like, we can tell. I'm squishy. But that's, we don't have membership fees. There are no dues. You get to decide how much you contribute, which again, a radical concept of an organization that is a gaggle of drunks in the 1930s. Hey, y'all drunks, could you voluntarily pay your own way, please? And then we sort of do, wild. And it says the only requirement for membership is, so that is our 7th tradition. Now the only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. They took out the honest in the 3rd tradition because they know us. Listen, who came here and was like, I have perfect motives to be here and I don't have any questions. Yeah, Kathy's like, I have perfect motives. I was a delight. We know. But like, who had perfect motives? No one, no, other than Kathy. But the rest of us, none of us had perfect motives. And again, I was looking for any reason, any excuse not to belong. So I think that's part of why we took out the honest. But what are we talking about as the 3rd tradition? It says we're not allied with any particular faith, sect, or denomination. So we're not associated with any religion, any sort of religious group, any sort of sect of any sort of religion, and, in modern 12-step, any sort of treatment center or alternative recovery model. We are not affiliated. And that's our 6th tradition. And it says, nor do we oppose anyone. That's tradition 10, because we're staying out of those public controversies. And it says, we simply wish to be helpful to those who are afflicted. And I love this one because helpful. Oh, that's not fix, manage, save, cure, codepend. Now, have I put on my cape and tried to save people? Heck yeah. But that is a theme that we're going to see in those later chapters. And what we're talking about there is simply the fifth tradition. Is there anything you want to say about any of that?
Yeah, I mean, what forward thinking right here. This was prior to the traditions, and they're right there. I think what stands out to me the most is um this this kind of it's funneling us towards a singleness of purpose, and this is a pretty wide open meeting anyone can attend and welcome. We're not scaring anyone off. Stay, and hang out with us, do what we do. And I think part of the traditions is pretty really important if you study them and you understand the history of it. There's a reason why we have that. Those who are afflicted or stop drinking, they're being pretty particular, especially if you read the long form of tradition 3, right? Or those who suffer from alcoholism, right? It doesn't say addiction. But I take anyone through the steps. I don't care what you're afflicted by. But here's the big thing that I try to stress, I guess, is it after we're done going through the process of the first step and through the 12 steps, is that you go to your design fellowship so that you can make it strong. Right, and then we'll do that as we go through the doctor's opinion more about alcoholism. There is a solution. We'll find out, are you a real alcoholic? Are you an addict? Or are you both? Or are you neither? And after you go to this, you could do this with anything. Am I addicted to marijuana? Am I addicted to alcohol? Am I addicted to sex, gambling? And the big book will literally pinpoint it to the point like, yeah, I lost the ability to choose to do that. Yeah, I have this phenomenon of craving when this happens. And what I recommend to all of you as we go through this process is that you go to your design fellowship and make it strong, because your fellowship needs that. And right, I mean, I hung out in AA. I like hanging out with granddaddy, right? But I was only telling half of my story. That's why I switched over to Cocaine Anonymous. Because, I mean, I do both, but I could cut loose. I don't I could let's just say you could say it's therapeutic to actually say your entire story, not hold anything back. Right? But if I could start talking about cocaine and alcohol, opiates and sleeping pills and stuff like that, but there's a meth head sitting right there, he might not relate. I might have not any depth or any pull with this individual, right? But if you are a meth addict and you can't relate to me, you will go through the process of recovery and look at this as a page of mirrors. And after you go through the process, you go to your design fellowship, because there's meth heads that need you, right? There's people out in this world that need you, and you carry, what did it say? We're uniquely qualified, right? Yeah, I don't know. That's all I wanted to say about that. Sorry, we're both under the weather right
Yeah.
now. Yeah, but I think we're doing all right, Paige.
I think we're doing all right. I think what happens is when
Yeah,
one speaks, the other gets the opportunity to sniffle and cough. And it
yeah.
works out real well. And so you'll
That's
know if
what I,
there's a brief or a quick transition. Over to you, Terry.
yeah,
I got some good
yeah. That's why I muted those.
yeah, too.
Cool.
Me too. All right. So it says, we shall be interested to hear from those who are getting results from this book. Now, I want to point something out. What are the results? That is what we talk about being recovered. We're talking about that permanent contented sobriety. We're talking about that spiritual awakening. And it says, particularly from those who have commenced, which is to say, begun, work with other alcoholics. We're pointing to the 12 step. Girl, we haven't even
Mhm,
gone into the doctor's opinion. And we're talking about the
mhm,
12 step. I have a responsibility to go and carry this message to others. And it says we should like to be helpful. We should like to be helpful to such cases. Again, that idea of I'm here to be helpful, not fix, manage, save, control. Helpful. And it says inquiry by scientific, medical, and religious societies will be welcomed, because in those early days, that's where we would get in contact with alcoholics to work with. And we can find readings by those various groups and organizations in the very back of the book. And I don't pop over to all of them, but later on, we'll pop over, in a couple weeks, we'll pop over to the medical one, because I like numbers and fun facts. And then it says Alcoholics Anonymous. Over to you, Terry, if you've got anything to say.
No, I think we should jump to the forward to the second.
Heck yeah, absolutely. So forward to the second edition. And I'm gonna give it to you like this is my favorite forward. It's so good. And I know I shouldn't have favorites. Listen, nobody tell the forward to the first that I said that, but oh, it's such a good forward. And we're gonna dive in with it. So figures given in this forward describe the fellowship as it was in 1955. So the first edition went out to the world, and they sent it out, and then 16 years later, they published the second edition, and it would have this added to it. And so it says, since the original foreword to this book was written in 1939, a wholesale miracle has taken place. I always want to stop and talk about that. A miracle has taken place. Do you know what's a miracle? Permanent contented sobriety. A hopeless alcoholic with a light on in their eyes and a joy in their spirit. You know what I mean? A compulsive overeater who has freedom. That crackhead that not picking up the pipe. You know what I mean? The gambler that's not in the casino. And then the obsession to go is gone. Do you know what I'm saying? That is a miracle. And when we describe recovery and being recovered as a miracle, I want to emphasize that because this is miraculous. People who have the illness that I have, lack of control, lack of choice, we don't survive that. We die of this thing. But here we are today on this Zoom call. Many of us, and if you're not recovered, oh my goodness, welcome, let us help you. But many of us are recovered who have had this experience and have years of sobriety behind us. That is a miracle, and I cannot overstate that. But also one of the things I want to point out, a wholesale miracle. So these miraculous things, permanent sobriety, it's like we got it at Costco. You know what I mean? Jumbo-sized miracles, and listen, we have to work for it, but they do have some, we do have some of the free samples. Uh, the spiritual free samples, when you get, this is not a metaphor I planned on making, but I'm rocking and rolling with it. Cause I don't have a Costco membership, cause dues and fees, but when I have a friend that takes me, oh, I'm there for the free samples. Those free samples are those little God shots, those moments of inspiration that get us to take those actions we wouldn't otherwise take. But the whole purpose of my Costco reference, not affiliated, Tradition 6, is the idea that this is so readily accessible today. And it happens en masse. You know what I mean? Like jumbo-sized miracles. If there's anything you wanted to talk about, and let me know if you have a Costco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to talk about miracles all throughout the big book. I have a friend in Boston who says that what is it? What does she say? This says expectations of premeditated resentments. And she always asks everybody, "You guys ever heard that?" I'm like, yeah, I heard that. That's true. And she said that's not really consistent with our big book. It's not, I mean, yes, expectations are premeditated resentments. If you really deep dive into the fourth step, you'll learn how in the third column, fourth column, all where you're playing God. But this book tells us to expect miracles, right? And the 1930s definition of hope means to expect something good to happen. I'm gonna say that one more time. 1930s definition of hope means expect something good to happen. And they're gonna show us that how this fellowship just boomed. I mean, look at all this right now. I mean, gosh darn it. See, I'm good with my language, Paige. Gosh darn it. We I shouldn't be breathing. I mean, period. I should have died in 2018. But I'm still standing here for a particular reason. I mean, I've been helping others lately, and where they come back 3 or 4 times and they go through the work, and I let them know, like, I'm like, dude, for some odd reason, God wants you to stay alive. And they're like, why? Where do you think that? So you could be useful. I'd say that every single damn time. And no matter how far we go, we don't regret it because it could help another person who's suffering. You know, there's someone right now that does not want to live, that can't stay stopped, and you have the ability to help them. You know, I don't know about you, Paige, but I get filled with so much gratitude. Sometimes it chokes my ass. Like, you know, it chokes me. I got to give it away. You know, that's why Paige, you know, Paige is doing three big book studies, right? Is it three? It's four? You're crazy. You
Yeah,
really are a loony.
I'm loony.
She really is. Like, she is the leading member of the Lunacy Commission. But there's a particular reason why. You know, we have recovered and we've been given the opportunity and the power to help others. You know, this study, this workshop, whatever you want to call it, this is all information and stuff that we've learned from other people that was given to them by people doing it for fun and for free. You know, this is what we're doing, and you'll have be a much more effective communicator of the big book when you take people through the steps. You'll be a much better presenter. You'll be a much you'll start to grow in maturity, emotional sobriety as you study the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? You know, sky's the limit, you know. So yeah, you know, I hope you brought your pens to class. You know, you're gonna need them, right? Thanks, Paige.
Absolutely. And while you're talking about that 1930s definition, I have it's not the unofficial 1930s dictionary. I just have a dictionary from the 1930s because I'm fun at parties. And listen, if I got out of the house more, I would bring this to parties. And the definition that I had, listen, I was at the David's house. And I'm like, do you happen to have a copy of the original manuscript? They did, and we were talking about it. Woo! I'm gonna get like those invites are drying up. But hope, and my definition matches that. It's the desire of good accompanied by expectation, anticipation, confidence. So it's that
Yeah.
desire matched with that expectation. And you say this, it's you that I'm stealing this from. You know, I believe in miracles because I am a miracle. That Terry's where
Yeah.
you know, our own miraculous
Mm.
recoveries are evidence of the miracle that is available. And listen, a miracle it and as Howard put in the chat, like these mass spiritual awakenings, that's that wholesale miracle. You know, when Roland Hazard, we might get to that today, we might not. When Roland Hazard, we're not. When Roland Hazard was told you're going to need a spiritual awakening, he was also told that the odds of this happening to you are like getting struck by lightning. But today
Yeah.
we can take a course of action and replicate a miracle. Man,
Mhm.
pretty rad. All right. It says our earliest printing voiced the hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. Already continues the early text, twos and threes and fives of us have sprung up in other communities. And that is going to be when we get to page 162, which will take a while. Uh, that is quoted in page 162. I just wanted to have that so by the time we get there, you know, I'm like, hey, you can go back to page XV and see it, and then you already have the note that says 162, and you feel real fancy. So I'm doing that for you. You don't have to feel fancy with any of my suggestions. Uh, and that's the thing. Voice the hope. You know, it's not this, hey, we're the only thing you can do. But man, if you have not found a solution, we hope that you're able to find one here with us. You know, there's an answer here. You know, an answer that happens as the result of the actions taken in this book. So it says 16 years have elapsed between our first printing of this book and the presentation in 1955 of our second edition. In that brief space, Alcoholics Anonymous has mushroomed into nearly 6,000 groups. We had 3, and now it's 6,000 in 16 years, whose membership is far above 150,000 recovered alcoholics. So I'm going to talk about fungi, and I'm going to do some math, unless unless Terry wants to hop in before I talk about, because he's a fun guy. Oh, so stupid. Unless he wanted to hop in before I did the fungi and the math.
No, I just want to listen to fungi and math right now. So go.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So fungi, woo, uh, come for the hopeless dilemmas, stay for the puns that are subpar. Not great. But when it talks about mushrooms, what we're talking about is that rapid, expansive growth. If you've ever seen like a mushroom cloud and just how it just grows, and like goes like that. But one of the things that I was thinking about recently was that idea of a mushroom. And where does a mushroom? It begins to grow in the dark. And where did the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous come and meet me? It met me in the dark. I'm reminded that I'm not sober because I did a solid step one. I'm sober because there were people who came before me who did some solid 12-step work. You know what I'm saying? People who came and met me in the dark. And we get to grow towards that light. You know what I mean? And like that, so that's my little mushroom metaphor. And I was supposed to look up whether or not people who study mushrooms are botanists, and I didn't. So if there is anyone who feels strongly about fungi, you can send me a strongly worded email. You can put it in the chat. It'll be fine. I'm not even asking for that one to be for carrier pigeons. I'll own my mistake on that. And then when it talks about whose membership is far above 150,000, recovered, there's that word again, recovered, not cured, but the obsession is gone as the result of this course of action. Recovered, 150,000 recovered alcoholics. So we're going to do some math. Woo! Please don't leave. I promise I'll do the math, So you can make a little note to see the preface. So if we go back to the preface, what we see is that it's the very first paragraph. This is the fourth edition of the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. The first edition appeared in April 1939, and in the following 16 years, more than 300,000 copies went into circulation. So there were 300,000 copies of the book Alcoholics Anonymous out in the world, and there's 150,000 recovered alcoholics. I will do the math. That tells us we have, at that time, a very rough 50% success rate. 50%. Because for 2 books that were going out in the world, 1 drunk was getting and staying sober. Not every drunk got a book. Not every book went to a drunk. So it is a rough estimate. But that's what we're seeing. And listen, if you're here and you're like, ooh, man, if you're like me and you're like, ooh, 50%. Ooh, that's not a comforting number. 2 things. 1, what was my percentage before I got here? 0. I was 0% successful at permanent contented sobriety. I mean, I could put some months between me and the drink. I just wanted to kill myself, which is not really the aim of this deal. So 0%, 0% successful. So 50% already doing, I can't do that math, like already doing so much better than what I'm bringing to the table. But also, here's my experience. I've been doing this for a little over 14 years. And I have seen people come and go, and I have lost loved ones, like people that I love, in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, in the rooms of 12-step. I've gone to funerals, like over 50 funerals in my life. And mostly those people that were under the age of 50, to be honest with you, most of them under 40 for sure. And I have seen people relapse all over the place. But my experience is I have never, and I mean never, seen anyone in the middle of this thing relapse. What I mean by that is actively has worked these 12 steps and is continuing to work these 12 steps as a way of life. I've never seen anyone there relapse. I'm not saying it could not happen. I'm not saying that my sort of view is the only view. And I love spreadsheets, but I didn't keep numbers because the ADHD wasn't going to keep track very well. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it couldn't happen or doesn't happen, but I'm just saying I've never seen it. I've seen a lot of people stop at step 4 and relapse. I've seen a lot of people stop at step 9 at relapse. The most heartbreaking thing is where I've seen people, that they do this deal and the light comes on and then they kind of back away, stop working with so many people. The prayer, the meditation, the evening review, the 10 steps, it falls away. Those amends don't get, you know what I mean? That erosion, and then they go out and we lose them. But I've never seen anyone living this program as a way of life relapse. And that's my experience. Is there anything that you would like to say about that before we get into geography? Woo! Pew, 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 pew.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I get perseverance. I think that's a thing that comes to mind. Um, am I really in the long-term game? And that all just stems from my my first step experience. Am I truly done? We're going to talk about permanent recovery in second edition. You have the ability to obtain it through a daily reprieve, one day at a time. But we can't teach you pain. We can't teach you your butt kicking. That's a gnosis. I mean, I was just listening to a speaker. Yeah, it was last night. He has 29 years, but he drank after 6, and he was doing the deal. And but he got things back in his life, material things, this and that, and all of a sudden we start to creep back into the dark. All right, we what is it? I have a friend in California says, "Don't let the life AA gave you get in the way of your AA way of life." And that's what will happen. Bad things are gonna come your way, but good things are gonna come your way. I have to be in constant state of perseverance through this process. This is why we're here. This is why I'm here. This is why Paige is here. This is the ability to continuously give it back to you. Because when we give it back to you, we get at the same time. We get to stay in this fourth dimension. We get to stay in God's country at the time. And I think about math. I mean, look, 50%, shit, man, that's Hall of Fame numbers, right? That's batting 500, right? At MLB, right? That's pretty good. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if these stats are pretty accurate, but I think Dr. Silkworth helped, I think 50,000 alcoholics. Is that right? Correct, right? And I guess 40,000 of them he helped prior to Bill, and he had a success rate of 1%, right? Something like that.
That's
Howard,
what he,
correct me.
that's what he claimed. However,
That's what he claimed.
there were only 50 beds in Towns Hospital, and he practiced there for 10 years. So you do the math.
Okay. Yeah.
Bill
Yeah.
prone to
Oh,
exaggeration. Leave it there.
gotcha. Gotcha.
Alcoholic?
Yeah. We
Saturate?
like to extend. No, no way. We're honest people here. Yeah, they stretch the truth to prove a point. But think about it. Like, this is the most successful treatment for alcoholism or addiction in the last 5,000 years. Right? Period. Period. Based on what just Paige just said, doing a simple, clear-cut path to replicate this spiritual experience. We have the ability, this pathway to power for everybody here. The thing is, the most dangerous thing that's in your way is your mind, and it's very powerful. I mean, alcoholism doesn't come in bottles; it comes in people. If you truly understand that you are truly powerless over alcohol, you need power in your life. You need an acquisition of power. And yeah, you get to refuel this power or this rocket ship, right, that we're on all the time, but by giving it away. What you're learning here, go tell someone about it tomorrow. Go talk about it. What is it Bill said to Bill Dotson's wife, right? He said, Henrietta, I don't, the good God's been so good to me, curing me of this terrible disease that all I want to do is keep talking about it and telling other people, you know. Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks.
Absolutely. The most sure sign of a spiritual awakening is the desire to go help somebody else. But I also put a little asterisk because I know us, and you're like, oh, I can't help anyone. I don't have the desire to do so. No, just go help them anyways. And then the desire will come. All right. So, geography. Pew, pew, pew. Groups are to be found in each of the United States and all of the provinces of Canada. Oh man, that's Canada. Now, it didn't mention the territories, you know what I mean? Because we got the Yukon Territory, and then we would have had the Northwest Territory. None of it wasn't a thing until 1999. But some of you guys that went to elementary school in Canada, you know what it's like to have to color in the Northwest Territories. Ooh, Oh, we get a medal on that. Where's my Canadians? You guys relate. The Americans are like, I can't. The continental U.S. is so easy to color, and I can't relate. Coloring Nevada, yeah, you got me, Christy. You know what's up. Yeah. Sorry, flashback to geography class. I will focus. Alrighty. AA has flourishing communities in the British Isles, the Scandinavian countries, South Africa, South America, Mexico, Alaska, Australia, and Hawaii. So in 1955, this thing had spread all over the world. Now, I want to point something out. We started with, hey, it's in all the states, and then it mentioned Alaska, and then threw in the country of Australia, and then Hawaii. Huh, that's
Mhm.
interesting. Why would they do that? It's because Alaska and Hawaii weren't states yet. They didn't get become states until 1959. So that's just my fun geography fun fact. You got to decide whether it's fun, but it is a fact. So the second edition was out before, Alaska was a state. So it says, all told, promising beginnings have been made in some 50 foreign countries and U.S. possessions. That'd be like Puerto Rico and Guam, that sort of thing. Excuse me. And it says some are just now taking shape in Asia. Many of our friends encourage us by saying that this is but a beginning, only the augury of a much larger future ahead. Now, the word augury, that means a prediction. Only the beginnings, the prediction, the start of something bigger ahead. And so,
Mhm.
is there anything that you wanted to say about that, Terry?
Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty cool stories in AA Comes of Age about some of these places, like Alaska and Australia. So I highly recommend that you check them out. Yeah, cool. That's all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, Yeah, I was thinking about Gary's book about is it Bobby? Is it Bobby P? Yeah, and how would she basically sponsor Australia by herself single-handedly? Do I have that right? Yes. Oh, I feel so good when I get the when I get the info right, when I get the nods and like how he's reaching to go get the book because he's responsible and he's purchased it and he's read it. Yeah, have a look at Howard's screen. You guys get a copy of that one, and literally the impact that one alcoholic had carrying this message across the world with letters and phone calls and man, like the impact that we get to have today. So yeah, that history to me is genuinely interesting. And oh goodness, my heart goes out. That's a tough story. I got the synopsis. I will buy it. I will buy it. You can hold me to it. All righty. So now we're diving into history, and some of you guys are like, "Oh, forward to the second edition. It's just giving me school flashbacks. We're going from period to period, class to class." Although I will say, you remember high schools? They used to have that smoking area. We're on Zoom. You can have a little smoking break if you need. Alrighty. So it says the spark that was to flare into the first AA group was struck at Akron, Ohio in June 1935 during a talk between a New York stockbroker and an Akron physician. And the New York stockbroker, if you don't know, write it down. That is Bill Wilson, Bill W. That is our New York stockbroker. And our Akron physician is Dr. Bob Smith. And what I love is that was the spark for AA. That was the beginning of AA. And we celebrate June 10th as Founders Day because it's the slightly inaccurate sobriety date for Dr. Bob. I could not, mention that because we're getting our facts together today. Uh, but what I love about that is this beginning of the Fellowship Alcoholics Anonymous is not Bill Wilson's sobriety date. It is the
Mhm.
first successful 12 step when there's two. And again, does that not point to the importance of working with others? When I say successful, listen, Bill was successful before he worked with Dr. Bob because he stayed sober. You know what I mean? But when he was able to carry that message to another one, you know what I mean? Another alcoholic, that is the beginning. Is there anything you wanted to say about that sentence?
Yeah, I mean, wasn't he? He wasn't a stockbroker, right? He was a stock speculator,
Yeah, he was
right?
a
Yeah,
stock
he was.
speculator.
And
Yeah.
then Dr. Bob was a butt doctor.
He was a colorectal surgeon.
They
a
should,
butt
they
doctor.
should, didn't they say that in the first edition? He was a butt doctor. I guess they took that out.
Yeah, no, listen,
But
here, Howard, I'm going to be inaccurate, but I'm doing it to be manipulative. Yeah, in the original manuscript, it totally said he was a weird butt doctor. And that'll get everyone to read the original manuscript. See what I did there? You look for it. But also, because we're talking about it and we're joking about it, could you imagine? Could you imagine, you're in Akron, Ohio, and you're like, oh, you're shaking it rough, going through DTs, and you hear that there's a solution for you. And you just got to make your way to the Akron City Hospital, and you get there, and you get taken up a couple flights of stairs or whatever, the elevator, and you sit outside, and what does it say? It says, Dr. Robert Smith, proctologist, colorectal surgeon. And you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh goodness, is the solution for my alcoholism invasive anal surgery? And what I want to point out is they went in. Now, how scary is that fourth step? None of you guys are going to be sitting on that. This is better, I promise you. I'm going to get a strongly worded letter. I feel it. So I'm just talking about the willingness they had in those days, I will say that's not quite how it happened. They were well informed, but let's get those 4 steps done. Let's go make that amends. So it says 6 months earlier, 6 months. So Bill Wilson is 12 stepping. Now he was 12 stepping far, far sooner than 6 months sober. And he was trying to 12 step pretty much as soon as he's out of the hospital, he's trying to work with others. But I just want to emphasize that 6 months, it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to have a spiritual awakening, and goodness gracious, it does not take long to work with others. In parts in where I live in the world, Calgary, I see that the bridge. What is it? Is that our Peace Bridge, Tom? I see you. I got that. That's a bridge we have in Calgary. People take wedding pictures there. I don't get out much though. But what was the? It's just, gosh, I'm just all over the place. But 6 months. 6 months. It does not take long to get well. And in Calgary, there are people that have the belief that, you got to wait a year before you sponsor. We wouldn't be here if that rule was in place. Like, we're meant to sponsor and to do it, like, get through these steps quickly and thoroughly. Because listen, I don't know about you, but I would get through a 6-pack quickly and thoroughly. I would get through my crack cocaine quickly and thoroughly. I ought to do that with these steps. I know I just said like 2 words. Is there anything you wanted to say about my 2 words before I kept going?
No, why delay happiness? Why delay freedom? You could go through the work very quickly if your butt's on fire. I remember, I came back to New York. I got back with my old sponsor and I was on the 9th step. I already made 2 amends. He told me, you're not ready to make amends. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? We're already making amends here. All right. Don't underestimate the power of God. If you're on a roll, go. Right.
Oh.
And you could have it. I had a vital spiritual experience on step 2. It doesn't matter. It's yeah. What's happening around the world is, I don't like my drinks watered down, right? I like the hard stuff, right? Yes, it's necessary that these meetings are held in place. They could be really boring, like, oh, I'm just living one day at a time, miserable day at a time. Those AA Eeyores, right? You could say that some people, and this is my opinion, if you're a real alcoholic, or let's just say good early direction is your higher power and you got 20, 30 years sober, I question if you're a real alcoholic. I don't know about the stats about how many non-alcoholics or non-addicts that are in AA, but there's some people out there that are straight up dying like I was, and I was told to stop. I wasn't ready to be on steps 1, 2, and 3. I literally was told that, right? We are people that have been saved, who were approached by people who were armed with the facts about themselves. Shit, I used to go to meetings and How many numbers did everyone collect? I collected all these numbers. And how many people did I call? No one. I didn't call no one. I challenge you, every single one. It will come at a time in your life where you need a meeting to feel better, need a meeting to feel better. That ship will sail one day. Okay. The whole point is I'm selfishly going to meetings to make myself feel better. Why don't you go with the intention to go to a meeting to help someone, to find someone who has terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair on their face, who is dying, right? We have the opportunity to help them. Get their phone number, not the other way around. I highly recommend you get their phone number, call them, sit down, and you could, based on where they're at, see where they're at. And if the level of willingness is there, go. Just like I said, go. My friend, here's Howard, he does a whole chat on the window of opportunity. I mean, these people back in this time, but we're talking about 30s, 40s, early 50s. This stat might be wrong, or I don't know. This is what I heard from another historian, is that they were taking people through the steps between 3 to 4 days. That's how fast that they were going through the steps. Right. Bill doesn't even go through the steps in proper order on page 13. Right. He literally took it in a matter of days. I mean, I took someone's through steps when I was in Toronto. This guy was dying, literally dying in front of me, told me he wanted to kill himself, had 1 year sober, and he was on step 1 in the big book. And I went through the steps with him. Literally, he was on the 4th step in a matter of 5 minutes. Like, I didn't mess around. I'm like, this is the deal. Let's go. This is why this big book study is in place, to get you well informed and properly armed with the facts on how to deliver the message properly, depending on when and how, wherever these people are at that specific moment. Because there's people out there that really honestly think that meetings are the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Right? It literally said, I mean, page, what is it? I forgot what page it's, I think 17 or something like that. Like, our fellowship. I gotta go there because I got that head cold, just like
I know,
what's her
the
name?
numbers are
Paige was talking
flowing.
about. Yeah, I'm messed up here, man. What did it say? The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. But that in itself, right, our common problem would never have held us together as we are now joined. That's a warning, right? Meaning that meetings by themselves do not keep me sober. I need an acquisition of power, right? And you could go to a meeting and go. I highly recommend, if you lead a meeting, have the topic be a common solution. You're gonna get 1,000 different solutions at this meeting. You could be the only person the big book reads, right? You could be that walking big book that someone's never read. This is why these studies are in place, to help you carry the message. Yeah, I don't know why I went on a tangent there. I guess I had some unresolved animosity about people who almost tried to kill me. I mean, I literally went to a meeting when I had 6 months sober. I came back to New York, and the dude, I asked about this event coming up on January 1st. It was like a ballroom dance. I don't know about you, but if you ever been to a sober dance of people of untreated alcoholics, it's pretty awkward. It's an awkward affair, right? And I remember I'm with this guy. I was like, yeah, like, I want to get involved in this service. I just got back to New York. I want to get involved, blah, blah, blah. That's what I was told. Get a home group, get a sponsor, get a commitment, get involved, right? And it was like, yeah, no problem. How long you got? I was like, I got 6 months. You know what he said to me? Keep coming back. I was like, yo, dude, I'm right here. I'm present in the moment. I'm here asking you a question, right? These are why these studies are in place, to help you approach. I don't even know how many times it says approach. What, Howard, 30 plus times in the big book, right? What does it say? 30 plus. We are
Exactly
supposed to be
30.
exactly.
30.
Oh man,
Look at
my
that.
my my look at that. I guess I'm not that far up. It says carry this message in the 12 step. What is the message? The big book is the message. Literally is the message. Carry your books to class. Yeah, that's all I got, Paige. Now I feel better.
I'm glad. I'm glad. And we're gonna tie it up and then wrap it up. And so one of the things I want to say is you said when you got here your butt was on fire. Dr. Bob would have been able to help with that both ways. uh, could not make that joke. I'm just gonna real quickly take us to the very bottom of page 262 because you talked about the speed with which they work the steps. And I just wanted to take us there so that we could see the velocity through which they were doing this thing. And this is our guy. His name's Earl Treat. We're going to talk about him later on. I'll enjoy him. Anywho, bottom of page 262. The day before I was due to go back to Chicago was Dr. Bob's afternoon off. He had me to the office. Uh-oh. Colorectal surgeon. He went in anyways. I'm just kidding. He knew what it was about. And we spent 3 or 4 hours formally going through the 6-step program as it was at that time. It goes on to say the 6 steps were complete deflation. Sounds like a step 1, deflation of my ego. Dependence and guidance from a higher power. Moral inventory. That sounds like a 4-step. Confession. That sounds like a 5th step. Restitution, that sounds like amends. Now that last one, continued work with others, that sounds like 12-step work. Now when we talk about dependence and guidance from a higher power, that sounds a little like step 2, step 3, some 6 and 7 in there, and some 10, more 11 than 10, but you know what I mean? So we're seeing the genesis of the actions that we take today. Now you were talking about our common solution. Now we're going to come back to this and kick off with that when we start next week. But our common solution is what's listed at the very bottom of page XV and the very top of page XVI, our common solution. It says 6 months earlier, the broker had been relieved of his drink obsession. The obsession to drink is gone. I need that. I need it taken away by a sudden spiritual experience. Sudden, doesn't take long to get well. Spiritual experience, that's what I need. And I'm just going to finish the sentence, so I feel like I've done that. Following a meeting he had with an alcoholic friend who had been in contact with the Oxford groups of that day. Thatcher, Throckmorton, woo, you can just write Abby Thatcher. And we'll talk about that and dive into the history about that next week. And so what I will do is I'll stop the recording and we can wrap up with the prayer.